The night had started like any other televised political forum. But within minutes, it was clear this was about to become a historical moment that would be replayed for decades. Donald Trump, flanked by his advisors and riding a wave of his usual brash confidence, took his seat under the bright studio lights. The audience was already buzzing, sensing the tension in the air. The producers had booked both Trump and former President Barack Obama for the same live special. Knowing full well that this pairing was a recipe for unfiltered confrontation, Trump leaned forward before the host could even finish the opening. Launching into an unprovoked tirade against Obama with that familiar tone of condescension that he wielded like a hammer. He accused Obama of destroying the American dream and weakening the country on the world stage. Each sentence laced with exaggerated claims, cherry-picked statistics, and an unmistakable undercurrent of personal resentment. The host tried to interject, but Trump's voice grew louder, cutting off any attempt at balance. "You left this country in shambles," he sneered, his hands gesturing wildly, "and now everyone sees it. Your legacy? A disaster? The economy? Foreign policy? Healthcare total failures?" The crowd reacted in a mixture of gasps and scattered. Applause from Trump loyalists seated in the front rows. Obama, sitting quietly with his characteristic poise, didn't flinch. He simply observed Trump with the calm detachment of a man who had faced decades of political storms and emerged intact. His lips curled slightly, not quite a smile, more a signal that he had already measured Trump's outburst and was weighing his response. Meanwhile, camera zoomed in on the faces in the crowd, journalists scribbling notes, audience members whispering, even a few stunned interns in the wings who seemed to sense they were about to witness something seismic. Trump continued, now, accusing Obama of covertly working against America's interests and hinting at corruption nobody talks about. It was the kind of rhetoric that would have been considered beyond the pale in a different era. But here it was, live on primetime television. The stage was set, the attack had been launched, and the question on everyone's mind was simple. How would Obama respond? Would he respond with the same measured elegance he was known for? Or with the kind of fire that could silence a man like Trump in front of millions? Obama took his time, letting the echoes of Trump's rant dissipate into the charged silence of the studio. He leaned slightly forward, resting his hands on the desk. His eyes fixed on Trump, not with anger, but with the kind of piercing focus that made even the most seasoned political operators feel exposed. "Donald," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "you've been talking for a while now. But all I'm hearing are grievances that have more to do with your own insecurities than with the truth." The audience stirred, sensing the first blow in what was about to become a masterclass in verbal precision. Obama's tone wasn't rushed. He allowed each phrase to breathe, as though he were building a case brick by brick. "You talk about the economy under my administration. We inherited the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. We stabilized it. We grew jobs for 75 consecutive months, and we brought unemployment down to under 5%. Those are facts, not feelings, not slogans. Facts." Trump shifted in his seat, the faintest sign that the control he had at the start of the exchange was slipping. Obama continued, now addressing foreign policy. "You claim I weakened America on the world stage, but it's under my leadership that we hunted down and eliminated Osama bin Laden. It's under my leadership that we built coalitions to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons without firing a shot. Leadership is not about loudness, Donald, it's about results. And results require thinking beyond your own reflection in the mirror." The crowd broke into applause, forcing the host to pause the discussion for several seconds, but Obama wasn't finished. He turned slightly toward the audience and then back to Trump. "And as for healthcare, millions of Americans who are uninsured finally got coverage. That's not a disaster, that's progress. You can tear down those achievements in your speeches, but you can't erase them from history." The applause grew louder, and even some of the audience members who had cheered Trump earlier were now nodding along. Trump tried to interrupt, but Obama raised his hand gently, not to silence him, but to signal he wasn't done. "See, the difference between you and me is that I don't need to insult people to make a point. I don't measure my worth by the size of my rallies or how many times my name trends online. I measure it by the lives we've improved. And I'd say we improved quite a few. The room erupted, and for the first time that evening, Trump sat back. Momentarily, without a retort, Trump's eyes narrowed. Clearly agitated that his initial barrage had been met, not with defensiveness, but with a counterattack that dismantled his talking points with surgical precision. He tried to regain momentum by leaning into his trademark bravado, insisting Obama was twisting the facts and claiming the former president left the military in disarray and the country more divided than ever. His voice climbed in volume as he gestured toward the audience, hoping to rally them back to his side. "People know I'm right," Trump barked. "They know you failed. That's why they elected me, to fix your mess." But the energy had shifted. The crowd was no longer fully on his wavelength. Obama let him finish, then responded with a calm so unshakable it bordered on unnerving. "Donald," he said, "division doesn't start when someone points out inequality. It starts when leaders exploit those inequalities for personal gain. You didn't inherit a broken country, you inherited a recovering one. And instead of building on that progress, you tore at the seams for applause lines." The words landed like a punch, but they were delivered with the smooth cadence of a man who understood that true power lay not in shouting, in speaking truths that couldn't be dodged. Obama leaned back now, his gaze still locked on Trump. "You measure success in wins and losses, but leadership isn't a game. It's about stewardship, about leaving something better than you found it. I found a nation in crisis and left it stable. You found a stable nation and left it in chaos." The studio fell into an electric hush, the audience collectively processing the weight of what had just been said. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out, only a brief, frustrated exhale. Obama didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He simply allowed the silence to frame the moment. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than any insult could. The host glanced nervously between them, clearly aware that history was being written in real time. Cameras caught every flicker of expression on Trump's face, the flush in his cheeks, the twitch at the corner of his mouth, signs that the man who prided himself on always having the last word was, for once, speechless. When the program wrapped and the credits began to roll, the moment had already started to explode across social media. Clips of Obama's clapback were being shared at lightning speed, hashtags trending in every major city, news networks replaying the exchange with bold headlines declaring it a political takedown for the ages. Backstage, the tension was still palpable. Trump stormed toward his team, muttering about biased moderators and unfair treatment, while his aides scrambled to come up with spin that might blunt the impact of the evening. Obama, on the other hand, moved with the same unhurried grace he had displayed on stage. He stopped to shake hands with crew members, posed for selfies with fans, and offered a few words of thanks to the production staff before quietly exiting. Through a side door, outside the studio, a crowd had gathered, chanting his name, some still replaying the moment on their phones, laughing at how effortlessly he had dismantled Trump's accusations. Journalists were already drafting op-eds dissecting the exchange, noting how Obama's approach, calm, factual, and unshaken, was a direct counterpoint to Trump's bluster and improvisation. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One man wielding rhetoric as a cudgel, the other wielding truth as a scalpel. By the next morning, the narrative was set. Headlines declared that Trump had walked into a verbal ambush of his own making, while Obama's remarks were being quoted everywhere from late-night comedy monologues to international news outlets. It wasn't just that Obama had responded, it was how he had responded, turning what could have been a shouting match into a case study in composure under fire. And for Trump, the wound was not just public embarrassment. That his opponent hadn't needed to raise his voice, hurl an insult, or even break a sweat to leave him without words. That, perhaps, was the most devastating part of all.